Hello, everybody, and welcome to CLCI Live.
Hola.
You may
It's
notice that we have a Joe instead of a Brooke this week. Brooke is out
Yes.
being a mermaid in South America, and we have a Joe. Joe is one of our office staff, our CTs. You've probably seen him in class many times before. If you've taken class with us, it's good to have you, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
So, we're still on Self-Sabotage 101. Last week, we talked about why you overthink everything and is it okay? Before I got to remember to do this step, before we get into our topic today, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and participate as well.
Yes,
If you're in
please.
YouTube or Facebook land, please participate. Give us your questions, your comments, your feedback. We love interacting with you guys. And I think that's it. On to the topic for today. We are talking about bad habits and how to break them. Why your bad habits are sabotaging you for success. It's probably a nice clickbaity title.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So, Jen, you got us to all think about what bad habits to bring to the table. Before we do that, what is a habit?
And what makes it bad? So we got two questions to answer.
Okay.
We'll start with that. What is a habit?
Off the cuff, my version.
Off the cuff. We're not reading the dictionary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a repeated behavior. That's how I would define it. Or potentially a repeated. I think you could have thought habits. So repeated thought patterns or repeated behavior patterns. Anyone else?
I like that. Oh yeah, go Joe.
For me, a bad habit is something that just impacts your daily life and those around you negatively. You know, when I think about bad habits, that's what comes to my mind. It's just the impacts of life in general.
I want to tack on to your guys' definition. They're repetitive behaviors, good or bad, that are done almost subconsciously. Like you just don't really think about doing it as you're doing it.
Right.
You may reflect on like, oh, I'm doing this, good or bad habit. But when you start doing it, you don't think about doing it. It's so ingrained in your routine that it's just, something that you do almost unconsciously.
I think you can be conscious about it though too, because
Definitely.
when we talk about what my bad habit's going to be, I can cognitively have the thought is I don't really need to do this. I really don't, but it's what I want.
I mean, you're thinking about it, but the act of you doing it, is that done on an unconscious level? Like, are you just sort of like observing yourself do the bad habit?
I think it depends.
It's on a argumentative level. So is it me observing me doing the bad habit? Or is it me arguing with me and doing it anyways? I would go with it's me arguing with me and doing it anyway. So it's very cognitive behavior or process in that regard.
Yeah, I think I've got a similar bad habit, at least the way I process it.
Let's stop beating around the bush and we'll start talking about our bad habits.
Yes, let's hear it.
Who's going first?
I think it should be Jen since she's so focused on the bad
Yeah,
habit.
Jen.
No, Jen.
Oh
Negative
my gosh. Fine. My bad habit is my phone and is scrolling. Shocking, right? Who does that? Yeah, I kind of mindlessly do it.
Did you say shopping?
Scrolling through. Oh, scrolling or shopping?
Scrolling.
Through
okay.
What?
Yeah.
What are you scrolling on?
I scroll on Instagram. I scroll on Reddit. And I sometimes scroll on Facebook.
But some of those are work related, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say yes. That's not completely bad. It's gonna be
but sometimes I can just do it because I'm like, it's like Have you guys seen the image? It's like a meme where it's comparing scrolling to a slot machine.
Yeah.
Endlessly pulling the lever and hoping that something exciting happens. That's kind of how I feel sometimes, where I'm just like, please, something be stimulating or exciting or funny. And then you reach the point, or I reach the point of diminishing returns. Where
You know, it feels so good though when like you're away from your phone for a couple days,
Oh my
like,
gosh,
kind
that's
of
what I was
involuntarily, like maybe you're on a trip or something, you're not looking at
Yeah.
your phone so much, and when you just start scrolling and all the new stuff just comes flooding in. It's all completely new. It's awesome. Love that.
when we were off those couple of days for the 4th, it was so wonderful. I didn't have to pick up my phone to monitor something. I did that I would say was a more of a mindless or a not mindless a mindless or
I
not
mean, yeah,
not a
subconscious.
subconscious thing, because I would pick it up and then I would go to our internal Slack chats and I'm like, oh, I don't have to do this. Let me put this down and walk away from the phone. Walk away from the phone.
Yeah, this weekend I was hanging out with fam, so I didn't
Yeah.
have a whole lot of time to really sit on my phone and
Yeah.
death scroll. So not to bring it into the conversation, but I had no idea about that political situation that happened over the weekend until
Oh, good for you.
I walked out of a movie theater to, find out that
Oh,
the
That can be
former
startling
president
when
shot
we
at.
get news.
Yeah, it certainly can.
Whichever way you float your boat, it's still very startling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So what are some other, before we get derailed, because we could talk about that instead, but before we get derailed, what are some other bad habits we have?
So mine, yes, it's shopping, but it's shopping for clothes. I've got so many clothes that I can't even wear now because I don't go anywhere. I don't teach. I'm not in front of the camera for the most part. I'm casually dressed. I'm comfortable, but yet, oh my God, that's so pretty. I did it today and I went, oh my gosh.
Well, what makes it a bad habit?
I don't need it.
Just don't need, it's a waste of
Don't need
money,
it. It's a
time.
waste of time and money.
I feel like that could be a good, it more so on the context of your situation. It's good or bad.
Yeah.
In this context, it's a bad habit. Jerome.
For me, I was thinking about this a lot. I think it's based on my age. I had bad habits when I was younger that I don't do anymore, and I have bad habits that are different now as I'm older, and they sort of shifted. And going back to what we talked about, being conscious about it. When I was young, I wasn't conscious about anything. I had no idea what I was doing at all. But as I'm older now, and with my experiences, I am conscious when I'm doing something that I probably shouldn't be doing. Like, because now I'm factoring all this other stuff when I'm thinking about it. Whether it's like grabbing a late night snack or staying up late or what have you, or just maybe just having that extra drink that I shouldn't have. As far as how it goes, I think I'm right in the realm with Jen and the phone. The phone's something I'm just really wanting to get away with. It's just so. I feel like I'm such a. I don't get around many people these days as I used to, so it's all done on the phone, and so I'm not really physically hanging out with people. And but it created a habit where this is just where I hang out, and it's like almost like a second sight is my phone, and I really love to just destroy it. I wish it didn't exist. To the point where I've actually been looking at dumb phones. I'm gonna get a dumb phone.
Cricket Mobile.
yeah. And just because I feel like it's just
a flip phone.
A flip phone, yeah. So
an old phone.
Yeah, get a
the
old phone.
The old folks' phones that they use.
Exactly.
They don't want the bells and whistles.
No, but
or the kids'
definitely
phone.
is a Kid's phone. Yeah, like a Cricket or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that's something I'm trying to, especially with having kids, where my attention is now more divided now because I have 2 kids. I gotta get. Come on, just kidding. I need to get better at disconnecting from the phone. I know my wife's not here, but she feels the same way too. She needs to get away too because it's just a habit. That's how we connect with people now. But it's not healthy. It's definitely not healthy.
Well, and everyone expects us to be attached to our phones at all times too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
So they have a bad habit too.
I think something's wrong if you go on a 30-minute hiatus. My mom, that's her. Well, my phone if I don't respond to her text in 5 minutes.
I know with my
Okay,
mom, she texts me every morning. We start the roll with her texting me, and then I respond. And if she doesn't text me, it's like, what's wrong?
Mm.
And nothing's wrong. It's just a matter of.
No, you're right. I mean, my wife and kids are out of the state right now, and I've been by myself for a few weeks, and I took one nap in the afternoon, and it was a good hour and a half nap, and my wife thought I was dead. What's wrong? Where you at? And I woke up and I see this long list of texts.
Where are you?
Where are you? What's going on? So
Oh my
that's
gosh.
how we do things now. We're like, you're just, if you don't respond within 5-10 minutes,
You died. It's time to call
you
that.
died. So it's amazing how that habit is though.
All right, Jerome. Do you
So
have any
it's
bad habits?
reinforced. Our friends and family reinforce our bad habits. At the
That
same
is true.
time.
Yes,
do.
they are
Yeah.
good scapegoats to blame.
Definitely, I
for
will
bad habits.
be happy to blame them anytime.
Good
Jerome.
segue into my bad habit, which is I tend to say yes without having full context way too often, whether that be plans or doing somebody a favor. And for me, that's a bad habit because I like to keep my word as often as possible. So if two things occur at once and I said yes without really fully understanding the context of me not being able to complete that, again, task, if I have to go somewhere, help somebody out with something, then first off, that person's not getting that help, or, they might have accounted for you to be there and you don't show up, which sucks for them. And then for me, again, I like to keep my word. So personally, just makes me feel like less of a person, or a bad person, I guess is a better way to put it.
But keeping your word is a good habit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you have good value in there.
Yeah, and I think I've gotten a lot better over the last few years doing that, understanding that I should get some more context before saying yes, but it still creeps up. And I think it's just really, it's a comfort to me in that moment to feel like somebody is, they're happy that you said yes in that moment. But it sucks when you can't fulfill whatever duty it is that, they're asking for you to do later. So ultimately, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I've got the opposite bad habit of Jerome, which is I have a tendency that I think I've worked on a little bit as I've gotten older, but a tendency to just say no, or to criticize, or to deconstruct, just like a negation. I have a habit of negation, which is really helpful sometimes, but I'm not really adding anything to the conversation, or I'm not offering anything for solution. It's just, no, let's it's always easier for me to deconstruct and pick apart things than it is to actually put forward any sort of solution. And I'm working on that. So that's one of the bad habits. The other one I was bringing to the table is Jen's, but specifically at night before I go to sleep, being on the phone is a really bad habit, because then I'll stay awake past the time I should be asleep, and that impacts sleep, which impacts the rest of the day. So I really need to stop scrolling on Reddit and TikTok. And then there was another bad habit. This one, I'm tempted to say that this is not a bad habit, and it's like the not doing of things that you should be doing. So my temptation is to say that not following through on personal projects is a bad habit of mine, but that's the absence of doing something, which I don't exactly think counts as a bad habit. A bad habit is an activity that you do that is negatively impactful some way. So I think I'm kind of cheating with that, but I'm sure most people would say, yeah, that counts as a bad habit.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I think it's not a bad habit, because it's like having a honey-do list. I have 30 things on it, and I only done 5 of them so far. But I'm still married. She hasn't left me yet, so that means that. So
Well, no, she's been gone for 3 weeks. What do you mean?
Well, I'll do them all tomorrow.
Yeah.
There you go. I think we go into why procrastination is good in one of our earlier lives.
Yes.
So what
Yeah,
are,
we do.
I guess to quickly sort of round off this conversation, what are some good habits that we have? Just like one good habit.
Mine is I pretty much work out every day. I move in some way, shape, or form pretty much every day, unless there's something major going on. And I don't even think about it. I just do it. It's just part of. There's no effort. It just happens. So I feel pretty good about that. It's taken a while to get to that point. So I love it, actually.
I have two really quick good habits. One is I read almost every day, all the time,
That's
because
good.
I always have a book on the table right here, and I always take my medicine and my supplements every day because I have this right on my desk.
Perfect.
Good habits.
How did you create
that are
that?
right there. What?
How did you come up with that? Create it.
It's because I needed to take blood pressure medicine because I'm so stressed out all the time, and I had all these supplements that I just take normally, like vitamin D and fish oil and zinc and magnesium. But I never did those supplements like on a regular basis because I didn't really need to. There wasn't like an important aspect about timing. But as soon as I was prescribed the medication, I was like, oh, I have to take this like every morning at a very specific time. How am I going to do that? So I bought one of these, and I have it right in front of me. Can't ignore it. Makes it very easy to just, take the medicine in the morning.
So what was the instigator from before when you didn't have something prescribed but had those nutrients to take to when you did have something prescribed?
Well, I think it's like I said, because there wasn't a necessity to take any of those other supplements. Like it's just, oh, those are sort of nice to do, increases your quality of life. There's no real impact of when you take them or, if you're on or off. Like you probably should be regular, but I just didn't do that. And as soon as the prescription medicine part came in, it's like, oh, I have to do this now or else it doesn't work.
So it's the story you told yourself that you got attached to make that
I think it's the story my doctor told me was that if you don't take this on a regular basis, your heart will explode.
Yeah. Do you want to die or do you want to live?
Yeah. Do you want?
That's the
it
catalyst.
that's
But
pretty much it.
it's still a decision to make because you still could have done what you did before. You could have chosen to leave it in the bottle in the bathroom or wherever it was. I'm making up a story as well as I go along here. But the choice to buy into the got to or this, so the consequences, the knowing the fact and then knowing the consequence allowed you to move in a way that made you make a choice to be committed to yourself that supports.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to jump ahead in a conversation about like when do you start making good habits or you decide to break bad habits, let's say.
Yeah.
And then how you maintain those habits, which I think are very different processes.
I think so.
Like when we're talking about life, like let's say coaching, for example. I think what you were describing was the why. Like why did I, what story was I telling or why was this an important goal for me to make this a habit? And that we can like talk about and we can intellectualize, and I made the decision to buy one of these, weekly things and put it in front of my desk. What actually built the habit was making it so frictionless that it was right in front of me and I can't ignore it. It's on there's nothing else on my desk except for my keyboard and then this thing.
So describe frictionless.
So we talked about this in an earlier live before about increasing and decreasing friction in regards to goals. But when we talk about decreasing friction, it's just making things as easy as possible where I don't even have to think about it. The medicine is not in a cabinet somewhere. It's not spread out in a bunch of different places. It's on my desk in front of me where I am sitting, 8 hours a day because I work from home at this desk. So even if I forget it in the morning, like if I'm just being forgetful, I take it in the afternoon because it's right there in front of me. And that's the part that doesn't require thought. It doesn't really require me to intellectualize or center myself onto my story or my why.
Mm-hmm.
I've just made it so easy and frictionless that it's right there. And I think that's part of building good habits, which is kind of what I wanted to end the live with, not start the live with.
Yeah,
We're talking about bad habits.
we'll get there. We'll get there.
We're talking about the frictionless aspect of bad habits, like our phones. We always have our phones on us, so it's very easy to start scrolling, doom scrolling. And I've talked a lot. I've wanted to talk a little bit about my good habit, and I ended up talking a lot. What are your guys' good habits?
I've got two,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not far off from yours. One of them, it's not a shake, but I'm going to call it a shake,
Mm-hmm.
just for ease of conversation. I do 8 greens, which is a kind of an effervescent vitamin. I do 3 different ones of those, and then I add beet and ginger and creatine and a seaweed thing. I can't think of the name of that. I've tried all kinds of other little tricks for different things. There's this vitamins and like you're doing it, all kind of, nothing stuck. But for some reason, it's right next to the refrigerator. The go-to, and I have been doing this routine now for 2 years, and it was easy and frictionless, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
That word became a true reality for me doing these things. It not a whole lot different from the other avenues I explored for nutrition and support in that, but this one stuck. The other one is my workout. I work out 5 days a week. I started off talking to myself, having a conversation with myself, and real conversation, not pie in the sky. What do I wish I could do? What am I willing to do? What am I willing to commit to? And so I started off with 2 days a week last year, and then I decided to add a different variation of workout. And I go, okay, well, what can I really do here? What am I willing to do, and what am I committed to do for my self conversation around this, to eventually this year, in January, the end of January, February, I went to 5 days a week of working out, and I'm very committed to it. My fear is if I get sick that I won't go back, because the last time I worked out a long time ago, I got the flu and never went back. So my diligence is to keep on that path. The other thing that helps reinforce it is I have to schedule it. It's not like the old days, you just show up and go to class or whatever. Now you have to schedule it. And I think that while it was an irritant to me in the beginning, I feel like that also helped reinforce my behavior of the buy-in, the story I'm telling myself that I want to be committed to this, because it makes me go to them and say, I'm coming. So for me, especially those 2 habits have been, one's a year long, one's a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years. And I don't have to think about them. I just go them. The other argument I have as far as workout, it had to be close proximity, because if I had to drive, there would be too many excuses. Like, I got to work, I got to do this, I got to do that. So it's got to be easy. It can't be at my home, because I'm not committed. I can easily get distracted there. Because I got a rower, and I thought, I want to do rowing. I think rowing is really healthy for you, blah, blah, blah. And I did it periodically for about a month, and then I stopped because I got sick.
So Given what we've talked about with our habits, why do you guys think that habits in general are so vital to person's success or failure
Routine. We
regarding
are human
goals?
beings who like routine.
Creatures of habit.
Mhm.
Yep.
And
Yeah, and the habits compound too into results. You
Mhm.
know, that just by doing something every day, it doesn't necessarily give you a result that day. Some stuff does, but like, you know, the vitamins or the working out, it's not like, you know, that does something immediately that day. If it does, it's not anything we can see with the naked eye, but then over a period of time, there might be results, whether, you know, it has to do with your health or the way, you know, you look, anything like that starts to compound.
Mhm.
It does. It does compound.
I think one of the misconceptions about habits that I see a lot, and I was very surprised in our research finding out, this was like on the Hidden Brain episode, the aspect of willpower, and that willpower has very little to do with the breaking of bad habits and the maintaining of good habits. A lot of people, what the conclusion they tend to come to, which I'm kind of afraid if I were to coach somebody on this, my clients might come to this conclusion, even though the science says that willpower really is only good for the start, like when you decide on breaking a habit. It's not really that important on maintaining that. Willpower has very little to do, and it's a very finite resource.
so what's willpower then in comparison?
What do you mean? And what is willpower? Or what
What is
are we
willpower
replacing willpower with?
versus our topic at the moment now? What's our topic?
From
Shit.
from what I researched was the friction aspect, and friction and rewards. Um, it's not about
Habit. Shoot.
buckling. It's not about buckling down and like finding out the why every day, reminding yourself, why am I doing this? I need to have the willpower. I need to have the strength, the mental fortitude to just
Right. The
persist
willpower
in
is
doing this.
effort, like a lot
Yeah.
of daily effort just
Yeah.
to do one thing.
And that's really not important in maintaining and breaking habits. It's the reason why you start, and it's the why and all that. But from what the research shows us scientifically in breaking habits is that you either disrupt the habit. So when Lisa, you were talking about if you get sick, that disruption is bad for when you're trying to maintain a good habit, but it's actually really good when you're trying to break a bad habit.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
finding a way to disrupt, your daily life so that you can sort of reinvent what you're doing. Friction, so making, it more difficult to do whatever habit it is. So like
Mhm.
one of the examples they gave was smoking. When people were trying to stop people from smoking, and there was all those ads. The ads can tell people, "Hey, smoking will cause cancer. It's X, Y, and Z bad." That's the why. That didn't really have as much of an effect as saying you're no longer allowed to smoke inside of a workplace or a restaurant. You have to go outside to smoke. That drastically cut, the habit of smoking down because it just made it that
Mm.
more difficult to get your smoking break in. And then there's finally the success or the rewards aspect of a habit. Like, what are you doing immediately in the moment that is rewarding you for this bad habit or good habit?
So what's reminding me about what you're saying in some of this discussion is we go from the willpower, that big picture of, like you said, the why. It's the big
Mhm.
picture, and the habit is the commitment or the management steps that we have to follow through
Yeah.
with. That
Which is,
allows. Mhm.
for me, it's a very unintuitive way that like I've coached people in the past. My default is to, let's get to the why. Why is this an important goal for you? And what is the long-term reward that you're getting out of this? It turns out those conversations aren't actually all that important in maintaining and breaking, good and bad habits at all. Because a person needs to be rewarded or they need to remove a reward in the moment they are doing that habit. which I tend not to talk about a lot in my coaching. That's a bad habit of mine. When I've coached people before, I just kind of ignore that aspect.
Well,
I'm a big picture guy.
I wouldn't say it's a wrong or bad habit in a sense, because sometimes people have to talk about it to move some of the thoughts through so they can get down to the nitty gritty on where they want to go with it. Sometimes I need to voice things, especially when I'm in learning. I need to speak about it out loud before I can get to the next learning. So that's an opportunity. And sometimes I need to be coached in the micro, the smaller perspective of what I'm talking about before I get to the macro, the bigger view of it. And sometimes it's the other way around. So the adaptability in the moment of what a client needs is more prevalent than anything wrong or right. It's just following that lead of where and how the client processes that particular thing that you're discussing.
It's funny. Anthony would definitely be a good coach for me because I'm definitely like the bigger picture. I don't like to peel the onion. Like put me in the blooming onion. Open it up. That's me. Like let's just open it up. Yeah, just get all in there, and that's where I kind of break things down on my side. That's how I work. I think
And
definitely
like
feel where Anthony's coming from.
And coaching with me, it's like cutting an onion because you end up
cry
crying every time.
Nice.
And our clients cry, success.
It was a good coaching session. So, bad habits. There's one tiny little aspect I wanted to talk about too, like why bad habits are like so self-sabotaging, because I think they can lead to addiction, which is an area that I don't think many coaches are qualified to work in. I think one of us brought up the example of a slot machine.
That was Jen.
Gambling is definitely an addiction. Smoking is an addiction. And those might be situations that are better handled by a professional or a psychologist or
I think
even a
that's
psychiatrist.
True, but I think it also can be a coachable moment as well with the professional licensed person, as a client working with that person, and then the follow through with what new behaviors, what new self-commitment processes do I need to reinforce. I can work that with a coach too.
Yeah. And I'm talking about kind of the extreme examples that are like maybe substance dependence. There's just some behaviors that, are at the point where it's no longer a bad habit. It is an addiction that is serving some sort of psychological purpose. Whereas good habits, nobody complains about having too much of a good habit, generally speaking. But the bad habits can be a slippery slope to something that is something that maybe isn't exactly as coachable as you would like it to be on the surface.
But
go on.
With addictions, coaching might be an appropriate modality to supplement the other help that they are receiving. I've definitely seen, situations where someone is working in multiple modalities to work on themselves.
Yeah. Absolutely. I guess what I'm trying to see, it can bloom into a bigger problem if a bad habit is left unchecked. It couldn't get worse over time if you don't do something about it, which is why I guess we're having this live today on how to break the bad habits. So let's answer that question. Guys, how do we break bad habits?
It is not that simple.
We've got 25 minutes left. We got to do this.
Well, I mean, we can give what the recommendations are, or we could take specific things and talk about how we've actually successfully done that. Choose your path.
Be
since
interesting.
we talked about ourselves to start, let's talk there first and then move what other people say.
So from the specific instances to the general advice.
Yeah.
So have any of us broken any bad habits before?
It's a work in progress. Like
Yeah.
I mentioned, you know, I like pretty things, and buying those pretty things that I don't need. I went through my closet the other day and pulled out bags and bags and bags of stuff, and it doesn't even look like I made a dent. And so I was looking at one of the stores, scrolling through my phone, at one of the stores I like to shop at. And I'm like, I do not need this. I just threw X amount of bags away. Not do, you know, so self-conversation does have a tendency for me to be where I work first and remind myself from the committee,
Mhm.
you know, what's necessary, what do I need, and what is not necessary. You know, part of the drive for one of the years to shop for something nice was I don't have any nice stores out here, right? So I had a wedding to go to, and I'm like, I don't want to wear any of these. This is just not what I want to wear. So I kept shopping and buying. So well, now I got nice things. There's no more excuse. I don't need to shop anymore for nice things. I don't have to wear them. On it. So it's the discussion with myself on my why, which is what Anthony said in the beginning. What is my why? What support do I need along the way? My support is for me to make sure I have a conversation with myself on really the need and want. And even if I want it, do I really want it? Or is it just in this moment? Is it going to sit in my closet? Swear word was inserted in there. Is it going to, swear word, sit in my closet and really never be worn? And so,
Hi, Kat.
hey.
Kat says, talking to myself only causes an argument.
So for me, that works. That is sustainable if I provide myself that time without hitting the button and buying.
I think for myself,
Mhm.
oh, good.
No, go on.
For myself, I found that a bad habit was broken out of necessity and change. The best example I can give is when my wife and I bought a home many years ago. We always used to eat out. We would always eat out constantly, and that was a bad habit of eating out quite a bit. And we found out that by doing this all the time, you spend a lot of money eating out. And we were able to break the habit by just realizing that we have a change here now. We have a home. Better to put our money somewhere else. And so it broke that bad habit, and it was actually creating newer habits that were good, which is funny how that kind of happens. It kind of created a whole web of better habits because we eat home more quite a bit now. And so I felt, for me, and again, I think it's that age thing to our experience, if you will. I think bad habits tend to, maybe, not for all people, but for me, as I got older, bad habits were just being wiped away, and better habits were being created as I started to mature more and so forth. I think life change tends to do well. I think in my experience, personally, of breaking bad habits.
But it was a conversation you and your wife had too. So again, conversation helped instigate it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which coaching, if you were in coaching, that might follow through. What other ways besides the conversation? Is there any other way besides conversation that can help break bad habits?
Hitting rock bottom, I think, could help.
Becoming incredibly desperate.
Would it be fair to say changing out of spite, kind of, sorta?
Absolutely.
Because my sisters, they used to, I felt like they conspired against me. They would individually invite me to separate things, and I would say yes to both of them because, I mean, it's my sisters. And I didn't realize it at the moment that,
He's a triplet, by the way. That's what he can refer to as well.
Yeah, so I've got another sister too who's consistently inviting me to go do things with her. And I would say yes. Like I said, it's a bad habit. I didn't even realize I was doing it as often as I was until one of my sisters told me, you know what, I'm not even going to invite you anymore because you never show up anyways. And I was like, are you kidding? No, like what? And I didn't realize it. But over time, after she had said that, I did realize, I was committing to plans that I wasn't following through with. I kind of just maybe allowed them, being my sisters, to be a reason for me to be like, oh, it's okay, they'll get over it. But once she said that, I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And now, it's a work in progress, like Lisa said with hers, but I'm much better with it.
Doing things out of spite or to prove other people wrong works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with Kat saying that some bad habits are more difficult to break than others. I used to bite my nails for a very long time. I think I stopped, somewhere in my 30s. I'm about to turn 41, so who knows? It's been stopped for maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years. I really don't even remember, but it's been a significant amount of time that I've stopped. But the journey to stopping was like, I tried everything. I put that stuff on it that tasted bad. I bit right through that. I don't even care. I was savage. It was terrible. I mean,
Stopping your fingers.
I would take a rubber band and I would try to snap it to like hurt myself if I wanted to bite, and I would just beat myself up and then just destroy. I was terrible.
Oh.
I was so addicted to biting my nails. But eventually what shifted was me and my anxiety. And so what I realized was that the nail biting was like a self-soothing, anxiety-related technique that was actually serving me, even though I hated it. And even though I called it a bad habit and wanted to stop, I couldn't stop no matter what I tried until I started to kind of level out with anxiety. And then I also, this helped a lot, I learned about how dirty your fingers are and how I could potentially get like flesh
your
feeding.
fingers, but not mine.
Well, I read like horror stories about people getting like flesh-eating bacteria from biting their nails. Yeah, so I like really like scarred myself with the potential of how bad it would be. And so that, in combination with my anxiety leveling out, eventually I was able to stop kind of organically without trying some sort of tactic to stop.
So horror stories is an instigator.
Absolutely.
Man,
Fear.
I just keep nail clippers in every room, so I keep them very short. I probably would bite my nails if I could, but I always have nail clippers.
I'm a nail biter. I have not done anything to try and stop.
Oh, really?
Are
Okay.
we all
You guys have
now
noticed during
as
live?
CLCI?
Yeah.
No.
Happening?
It's out of boredom, really, is what it is. It's kind of-
Okay.
yeah.
I
But
like
you
the
know
taste.
what?
Yeah.
Like
Jerome,
Eating
Sense
them.
of stimulation.
Okay, I was just gonna say I still frequently run my fingers across
Underneath
my
each
nails
other.
constantly.
I do that
like
too.
Yeah. So there is still something going on.
I'm gonna
It's
need
just
to read
not
up on
biting.
that flesh-eating bacteria because hopefully.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'll send you an article.
Kat, if anyone else is watching, Kat, you're just learning how fucked up we are. All this is just sort of airing it out.
We're human is what that proves.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But you know,
Absolutely.
there are different ways. The gist of this whole conversation is there's not one set path of breaking bad habits. There's
No,
a lot
there's
of
not.
different ways to skin a cat. Not that you should make a habit of skinning cats, but there's a lot of different ways to go about it. One of them is punishments, or working on the not just the symptoms, but the root of the behavior. In Jen's instance,
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing at Kat saying I've known for a while.
Oh, good. Yeah, there's lots of videos that document.
Yes, no, please don't skin a cat. I agree.
Not
Okay.
a cat with a K. That's
Real,
very good.
real. That was funny, Kat. Oh my gosh.
Or with a C. I'm gonna go ahead and stand up for the cats. that
Yeah,
start
just
with
no
a C,
skin
too.
cats. But one of the other ways to break bad habits, from what I was reading, disrupting the behavior, getting to the root of the problem, rewarding good habits instead, which I thought of a silly one is whenever you want to do something that's a good habit, you have a cigarette. And, you just create another bad habit with a good habit.
I was thinking when I work out and I come back home, I could have
Yeah, just have a cigarette.
Oh.
You know, if I don't procrastinate and do all my work, I get to have a drink, I get to have a cigarette. You know, you just are shifting the bad habits around. But less tongue in cheek, rewarding yourself for the things that you want to do, and disincentivizing the things you don't want to do. I think in coaching, we talk a lot about, we ask that question, how does this serve you? Because clients will tend to say things that they don't like. And when you ask them that question, they typically say, it doesn't serve me. It's bad. I don't like doing this. This is a bad habit. But really exploring that aspect of, this does benefit you in some way, and you do get like an immediate reward from doing this bad habit. Figuring that out is the first step in disrupting that reward and replacing it with something else entirely, or just, removing the reward.
And yes, this is such a good point, because had I had a coach when I was like desperate to stop biting my nails, and we had kind of gotten to the root of like, oh, this is a self-soothing tactic, we could have then strategized of all these different options I had for self-soothing. And potentially I could have lightened up on thinking of, this is so bad, I'm disgusting, this is terrible. Like I was constantly beating myself up over it, when we could have just turned it into more of a strategy. So.
I mean, it could be even with your coach. So it could have come up to be where, so before you bit your nail, what happened before that? So it made you more conscientious of what you were experiencing before that moment, so that you would recognize what that energy, emotion, thought, feeling, whatever was going on, that you needed that self-soothing moment. And then what else could you do for that moment that didn't entail your fingers or whatever would come up. So given that opportunity, you could have gone down a completely different path, perhaps more quickly, right? And really identified what would be working for your benefit in all cases.
I love Kat saying we're accidentally coaching her, because she's thinking about why she bites her nails. And Jerome said boredom. I said anxiety. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different reasons that it could be. I mean, it could ultimately just be like general discomfort or dissatisfaction. I mean, you never know what feeling it is that we're trying to avoid by creating this other feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then decide which one were you going to support. I think of that wolf story. Which wolf will you feed? Which one's going to take the priority in that moment? Because the bad habit isn't going to go away. It's not going to go poof, I'm gone. That bad habit's still going to remain, even though you're working potentially on a new direction, a new path. You have to decide what you're going to feed.
Yeah.
I've only got one wolf inside of me. Alpha wolf. Just getting that out there. So I want to bring this to coaches now. We kind of talked generally about bad habits. What do you think are some bad habits that coaches specifically have, and that they try to break through their career?
Well, giving advice. I'm not sure if that's what the direction you're going to, but
yeah, that's the direction. That's one of them.
Giving advice. Many people think that it is the reason people come to them is the advice they give, and honestly, it's the kindness that comes from you of paying attention to them that they come for. They don't need your advice.
I think for me, the one I think of is ruminating about your sessions and over analyzing and criticizing every little thing you do or say. Oh, I'm sorry. Do I just do that? I'm just kidding. I did that in the beginning, guys. I did. It was big and scary, and I ruminated about my sessions, and it was torturous.
That's what mentor coaches are for.
Yes, I have since gotten past that.
So if you're watching this and you've taken coaching 101, 102, and you haven't done mentor coaching, and you're ruminating about your sessions, just have a mentor coach. They'll,
Yes.
fix you right up. You don't have to ruminate.
Fix you. We don't fix anybody.
Yeah, we don't
No,
fix,
it
but
really, mentoring is really helpful for that. It really helps. It helped me to just like simmer down and trust the process and trust myself and understand that I'm human and that I'm not always going to ask the perfect question, or I'm not always going to say something. I'm not going to reflect perfectly. I had to just drop all of that and just allow it all to be enough. And then once I did that, it was like, oh, okay, this feels much better now.
taking 102 for the second time next month. It's just that
Yes.
good of a class.
It is.
For all of you who haven't taken 102.
I love that class. Yeah.
I think I say a lot. I think that's more of just like a broadcasting, or it's just something that when you were public speaking, you don't, unless you do public speaking, you don't think about it too much. But then you become very self-conscious of it when you see a recording and you're like, why am I saying so much?
And then you get to hear it and you just, so the first go-to is you usually wind up saying it more before you tend to release that. Yeah.
I think another one that coaches tend to have, which is sort of a broader category, is that they like to talk. They think, I've got something really great to say. I've got a really great question. Just sit in the silence.
Speaking too soon. Yes,
Yeah,
for sure.
Just
To
let
me,
your client do the talking.
I call that trying to be interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And our job is to be interested, not
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah. And you might really have something interesting to say. You might have the most profound things to say all the time, but that's not what coaching is. Your client is the interesting one.
I would think a bad habit coaches might even have is not really taking time for themselves, not taking care of themselves, because they are so busy. They want to get those clients in. They're just get their socials ready, their website, what have you, and tend to forget that you need to take care of yourself. And just based on some of the conversations I've had with coaches who are like, I'm hitting a wall right now. And it's just that's a bad habit, is really just not taking care of yourself. So take care of yourself.
Jerome, you've CG classes before. What do you think these coaches have as bad habits?
Yeah, I think a really common one, I think you kind of touched on it already, though, is really just over speaking. I think part of that is just kind of being afraid of the silence. When we've spoken about time and time again, that's really where a lot of the work gets done, is when you give your client the opportunity to speak, sit, and think about what direction they want to take that session in.
Coaches, shut the hell up. That's all we're saying.
Shut up.
Just shut up.
Shut up.
But
Take a
you
big
know,
nap and
once-
shut up.
Once I learned that in mentoring, my sessions were so much easier because I was not trying so hard. I wasn't doing like this unnecessary work. And I realized like, wow, this feels so much better to just be present and be fully here rather than anywhere else in my head. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
for sure.
I feel like
As a coach,
Performance needed.
for new
Right.
coaches, they just want to do a really good job. So I think that's where a lot of
Right.
that comes from too.
I get that. But
Come
as a
across.
coach, don't work harder than your client. Don't work harder than your client.
Well, and they're trying to apply all the skills that we have shown them and taught them, and they don't want to do it wrong, because if they do it wrong, potentially it's not right. And well, I don't want to go down the path where I was thinking, but the idea is to, be what is John
Wick.
no. No, Maxwell. John Maxwell. Failing forward. Being able to go down a path, get it wrong, and recognize the adjustment is the best learning in the moment that can happen. To be afraid to approach, that's the struggle, and where overthinking happens, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where not proceeding because I'm too worried about getting it right. and I have to have the perfect questions. And what we're talking here in this habit, you don't have to have a perfect question. You have to be present. You have to be mindful. You have to be aware of the competencies and ethics, but apply coaching skills that where you're really hearing what that client is saying and add to the conversation, not worry about whether or not you're getting it right. And you don't want to get it wrong too often, but be able to go forward and learn from your mistakes.
Mhm.
I think another one, unless you're going to say this, Anthony, is that prevents them is marketing. That story they tell themselves that they are doing marketing when they've built the website, and that's not marketing.
Right.
I was going to say that, yeah.
I'm sure you were.
Yeah. So the bad habit would be thinking that you're doing more than you're actually doing.
You know, when I used to be on the phones, that's what they would tell me, you know, and I would go, well, have you done this, you know, no. Oh,
Right.
tell me what your idea, I had to go back into the beginning where I probably should have asked first, which I didn't. I went into the solution direction first because that's the business side versus the coaching side. I had to get back into the coaching side of things. So it's a learning curve. Anyway.
So we're coming towards the end of the hour. I have a feeling that this should have been a two-parter episode where we talked about bad habits, and then the next episode we talked about building good habits. Save that for another live in the future.
We're going to fail forward on this one, guys.
Well, it's not even failing. It's just we'll save that for another month when we're not talking about self.
Such a bad habit.
But what are your guys' final thoughts on just breaking bad habits?
I think that we didn't really go into too much depth about the importance of, if you're really trying to break a habit that's a part of your routine, a bad habit, you're probably going to have to replace that with something that's a little bit more fulfilling to your life, something that's a little more beneficial than that bad habit. Because like we mentioned, they don't just go away. You can't, you're most likely not just going to forget about it. So replacing that with something that's healthy for you and can benefit you in the long run is going to be really beneficial for that.
Same with Jerome. I agree with him on that one. And another one, give yourself grace when you're trying to figure these things out. Don't crap on yourself, and just hopefully you'll get through it.
I would agree. I would think, we're going to visit our bad habits as we are trying to move into living our good habits. The idea of that grace, I think, is a really important space to come up with a plan that if and when that happens, where you transfer back to the bad habit, what are you going to do to get back on or in the good habit, which is part of my discussion with myself and my commitment for working out. So for me, I have a plan.
Jen?
I like making it as unattractive as possible. So,
or make it a horror story.
Yeah, I mean, make it awful. So
if you
with
have trouble biting your fingernails, don't wash your hands. Why don't you make some raw chicken?
To have filthy hands and just gross yourself out, and you won't do it.
That's gnarly.
No, but for real, with my phone, I have set up little 10-minute and 15-minute alerts, but I'm barreling right through them, man. I'm hitting. Nope. Do you want to? You've been on here for 10 minutes. Do you want to stop? No. So
give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. You'll get there.
And
look, sometimes it works. It does. Sometimes it doesn't work. So a lot of it does depend on what's going on with me, and how, again, the story I'm telling myself, what's happening consciously. What am I choosing right now? I will tell you, I'm actively choosing to go F it. I want to keep scrolling.
Gotcha. So Jen's advice is just keep doing the bad habit.
F it.
Understood. I'm glad we've come to that conclusion after an hour of
Oh
talking.
my goodness.
Mine was kind of the same as Jen's. Just make it more difficult. And keep making it more difficult. Don't give up like Jen. Don't be a quitter.
What a
Find
quitter.
ways to just make it more difficult to continue this habit. Even if it's just small little increments of making it more inconvenient. Having those alarms is a good step. One thing I used to do, which I should start doing again, is having timers on my apps that I can't even access the app when the timer expires. If you're a coach who talks too much during a session, put a pacifier in your mouth when you're coaching.
No, hold on. I actually have a great one. So if you use an AI note-taking tool, it tells you your percentages. So I can always see that I'm 80-20 and
That's pretty good.
That's cool.
I had one with the AI stuff too. It's or just whatever transcriber thing. I used to take notes a lot. Too many notes during a coaching session. That was a bad habit because I wasn't paying attention. And I just let the transcriber do the work for me. And I'm just present in the conversation. And the notes will happen or not happen if the thing doesn't work. But the sessions are better. The point is, just don't focus so much on the why. Just focus on making things easier or harder for yourself.
Yeah.
The why is, what got you started. That's not so important when you're in the process. That's the end of my spiel. Thank you guys for joining us on CLCI Live. Thank you, Joe, for guest starring as well.
Yeah.
We got to have you more
Thank you
often.
for the cameo.
Thank you,
you're
Kat,
welcome.
for entertaining us and talking to us
Kat.
as well. And
Thank
if you're
you.
watching at home, thank you for joining. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment, and get into a good habit of taking our classes.
Yes.
Yep.
Coaching 101, Coaching 102. We still have the advanced $200 sale. If you take our package deal or you're taking Coaching 102 for the first time, you get $200 off with advanced 200. And if you take class through the whole 3 days, reward yourself with a cigarette. I don't know.
Oh my God.
Make it a habit of taking our classes.
Actually, you could take our classes once a year, right? Because alumni can come back and rejoin, no charge, once a year. So
that is true. Any class that they've taken, like Kat has. Thank you, guys. We will see you next week. I'm not sure what the topic is going to be about, but it will be self-sabotage. So we'll see you guys next week.